The National Council of Provinces Chairperson Amos Masondo says there are many workable solutions to drastically reduce the school dropout rate. Masondo made his opening remarks during an engagement between the Basic Education Department and the NCOP to discuss how to curb the dropout of learners. About 200,000 learners did not return to school in 2021, and 120,000 learners drop out of school every year due to pregnancy. Masondo highlighted some of the social factors leading to learners dropping out of school. Let's take this discussion further then. We're joined via Zoom by education expert, Professor Mary Metcalfe. Prof, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for giving us your time here on SABC News as always.
Thank you, Flo.
I mean, a scary figure here, 120,000 learners fall pregnant every year. I mean, I think we all knew that there is quite a problem there, but this is really a large number that we're seeing here. And with only a third of those then returning to school after the pregnancy. So this is actually a double problem, isn't it? The fact that we're dealing with the pregnancies and then we're dealing with not returning to school. How do we address both of these? I mean, I'm hearing Amos Masondo saying that there are workable solutions. What could those workable solutions then be? And I'm wondering if we should be necessarily placing the burden all on government.
Yeah, thank you, Flo. I think that the data on pregnancies linked to dropout is important because it brings in a kind of gender perspective to what's happening with our young people. But I think maybe there's 4 key points for me. Number one, we know that dropout is a problem. We know that it's a problem historically, particularly in high schools. And we know, secondly, that the dropout is going to be exacerbated by COVID because of the gradual disengagement from school. We know that dropout is very damaging to young people because children need to leave school with a sense of belonging, a sense of social inclusion, a sense of achievement, and the sense of possibility of being incorporated into society and to economic opportunities.
Right.
And the dropout process is a disengagement, which means it's less likely that learners are going to be confidently feeling that they belong. And it's bad for society that we have such high levels of dropout and worrying that it's increasing. Now, what needs to be done is that we need to understand that it cannot be government on its own. It has to be family and community. And I want to applaud the Zero Dropout campaign, which was launched before COVID, but which is systematically looking at the data, what information do we have, and working with government and working with other stakeholders to say, what are the strategies that can be put into place? And the first thing is obviously monitoring. You know, all schools use the SASAMS, the South African School Administration Management System, in which they can record which learners are attending and which learners are not attending. As soon as there's a consistent pattern of non-attendance, we need schools to be connecting with home and community to say what's going on here. How can we help?
And in fact, Prof, I wanted to ask, you know, the link between, it seems as though in the poorer communities we see this scourge a whole lot more than I suppose in wealthier communities where teenagers get pregnant. But on the back of my question regarding that, you know, what the link there, I also want to talk about where are these young girls then going? What are they doing afterwards? It's not like there are enough jobs in the country. I mean, if it's difficult for graduates to even find work, what more someone who didn't even, you know, finish school because of a pregnancy? So one wonders, where are they going? Okay, so is it the informal job market? Are they, you know, going to sell things? Are they going to work as domestic workers? I mean, where are they ending up? Is really what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. Well, firstly, all of the economic data shows that the having matric is in fact the first major differentiator between the likelihood of finding employment and not finding employment, which is why it's essential that at least we get learners through to matric. The learners who drop out, who leave school without getting the National Senior Certificate, are generally being in a social space of non-inclusion, by which I mean they may not be actually active in community structures, alienated a bit from family. Young learners that are female, that are mothers, are probably involved very much in childcare.
Yeah.
And you would see young people, not all, but you would see many of these young people being the alienated, the ones on street corners, the ones that are not contributing. And so the challenge, I think, for society is when a learner drops out, is not to label and condemn, but to find ways of bringing young people, if not back to school, at least back into a positive and constructive relationship with community and society. What are the ways in which they can volunteer, be made to feel positive about the contribution that they can make?
Yeah. You also touched briefly on the issue of, the pandemic also adding to the dropout rate. And I'll, for lack of better terminology, I'll call this the pandemic dropouts. How much did that add to this, already problematic situation that we find ourselves in, with the mixture of pregnancies and everything else that's linked to dropouts?
For me, it's inevitable that there will be increased dropout because all of the research shows that kids, learners on the whole, there's exceptions, but learners on the whole just don't on a day decide to stop going to school.
Yeah.
What happens is that they go to school less and less and less until they've dropped out.
Yeah.
Now, what needs to be done is that we need to be able to monitor the information at local level because the estimates that we have nationally are not at this stage particularly clear, and I'm looking forward to seeing the report from National Council of Provinces today. At the moment, there's two key sources of that information. The one is the CRAM study, which used household data and surveys of households to determine if there were learners who did not return to the school. Now, at the moment, what we know from the DBE press conferences is that the DBE data doesn't quite match what the CRAM survey said. The most reliable information has to be at school level, which is why we need school and district level interventions. But we need to know that the big picture says we are in trouble and we will be in more trouble. And we need action that's driven by school and community because that is the most immediate place that you can find leadership to address dropout.
And just in closing, Prof, just on a personal note for you, I mean, do you have faith in, the NCOP and the DBE discussions on curbing the dropout rate? I mean, they're saying that there are, some workable solutions, just to quote them. And, we've certainly heard about discussions happening. We've heard about, finding solutions. But, at the end of the day, we'd have to see this huge number, for example, of 120,000 learners falling pregnant and dropping out, dropping significantly from that figure. So I wonder, from your point of view, do you really have faith in these talks?
What I have faith in is the only thing we can have faith in, which is that government will work together with stakeholders. It can't be one or the other. So the DBE needs to get the best data, and the DBE and all of the levels at which the education system works, school, district, province, need to collectively work with the stakeholders, use resources such as the Zero Dropout campaign resources to say this is a challenge and we are going to address it. It can't be solved by one party alone. And the only thing I can hold on to in terms of personal hope that we can solve it is that everybody comes together to put their best efforts into identifying learners before they drop out, preventing them dropping out, and then find ways of including young people once they have moved away from school.
All right. Prof, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us your time on SABC News. That's Professor Mary Metcalfe, education expert, talking to us, of course, about the Amos Masondo talking about workable solutions with regards to the high number of dropouts and teen pregnancies that are experienced in the country.